Hello, friends. I'm going to talk about a band right now that I never heard of before early 2000s when my good friend Lisa Fancher, who is the founder of Frontier Records, she's like one of my celebrity friends. Um, and I'm going to try to get her as a celebrity guest on this podcast. Let me see if I can wrangle that. But until then, I'm going to talk about this band called Zolar X that was a sort of a big deal for a bit here in LA in the 70s. They were a glam band. And, I've talked about the whole thing about how I think punk rock came out of glam because it involves, a little bit of dress up. You have to, there's a sort of a look and a vibe and an attitude. And a lot of glam bands sort of put on this stage persona, and a lot of punk rock bands put on a stage persona. And you had folks like David Bowie out there who were literally playing a character on stage. And I think a lot of the punk rock bands kind of carried that over, and they became these sort of aggressive characters on stage. They became like a scary version of Ziggy Stardust. And the guitars, I mean, David Bowie had some pretty cool guitar players in his band. And I think the guitar sound of punk rock came out of glam. The aggression, that kind of in your face, larger than life rock star thing. Even though punk rockers sort of claim to be rebelling against that idea, they were doing it. A lot of the punk rockers were concerned about how they were dressed. They went to the stores, the fashion stores. They dressed a certain way. They were concerned about their look. I mean, even the Ramones were concerned. They needed to wear a certain thing on stage that was part of their image. It was their persona. They dressed up. And, that's just the way it is. And before that, glam was such a thing. And there was this idea too. I've heard so many bands that, you go see bands play live and they play characters on stage. We all know this happens. It's something that, maybe it's a deep, dark secret with some bands that don't want you to know that off stage they are not like they are on stage. They keep that persona whenever they can, or for as long as they can. And then, Kiss wipes off the makeup but they're still sort of in persona, in character. But there's some bands that would take on these characters and stay in character to the point where you wonder if there's something wrong here. It's like, or if the idea is you're supposed to accept that these people are who they claim they are. When Bowie was doing his early shows, there were people who thought he was from another planet, or said they thought he was from another planet. There were like fans of his that were like, he's from space, man. He's from outer space, because the persona that Bowie was projecting was so believable and so intense. But this band Zolar X, Zolar X, like that, were an LA glam band, pre-punk, pre-new wave. But they had all that stuff. I think they kind of had this sound of a certain faction of punk rock, new wave, that they were doing years before the punk rockers and the new wavers were doing it. And therefore their music sounds like it came from a later time than it did. They were very much ahead of their time. But interestingly, the persona that they projected on stage was so intensely cool that you can't help but just love them. They dressed up like aliens, like space people, but not in a serious science fiction form of aliens. They were sort of like a Jetsons variety of science fiction. They were that kind of 50s or 60s version of when the novelty records were coming out about like the Martian Hop and things like that, where the Martians spoke in the speeded up voices, and they used a different language, and they had antennas. And Zolar X did that. They had these cool haircuts and antennas, and they wore the sort of spiky shouldered Zolar X outfits, uniforms, which interestingly were designed by wardrobe genius V. Neal, who went on to work for Tim Burton and various other people. I mean, she designed costumes and for Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and the Lost Boys, Amazing Spider-Man. The list is intense, and so she helped them in their early incarnation to try to come up with this look of how to do the antennas, the haircuts, the costumes, and the stage props. They used to decorate their stage. Even the mic stands had these little, astro rings around them. Very googie, very cool, very mid-century modern in some ways. But they were not just a look band. They also had a sound. The guitar playing was intense. Really good. The people in the band, I'm not giving away a deep dark secret here, but the guitar player was named, I don't know if I can pronounce this right. I don't speak Zolarian, but Igarist, whose real name is Stephen Delabasca. Don't tell anyone. But fantastic guitar player, and way ahead of his time with a lot of the palm muting stuff that he was doing, that kind of punk rock aggression, the da 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 da, and really good rhythm guitar playing, and just fun riffing, fun riffy guitar, like power pop type guitar playing, and their songs were all a part of the concept. All of their songs were about outer space and aliens. Things that had to do with their own science fiction world. It wasn't based on any kind of science fiction that you knew of, other than the fact that it looked like the cover of a cool science fiction comic book or pulp fiction kind of science fiction. It wasn't Blade Runner. It was the Jetsons. It was more like the Jetsons. They were kind of like what you would imagine a live action band that would live in the Jetsons universe. Like if Judy Jetson went to a nightclub and saw a band play live, this is the band that it would be, obviously. If she sort of got into the heavy stuff. they were heavy, but at the time they were glam. They played at Rodney Bingenheimer's English disco. They played all the clubs in LA. I mean, they played all the clubs in LA at the time, and everybody back then knew them. Friends of mine who remember, I wasn't living here during that time, but friends of mine who remember them as being really, they would see them walking around on the streets. They'd see them walking down Sunset Boulevard, totally in costume, totally in character, speaking this alien language that they had invented. So that aspect of them was so much a part of them, was the character, but the music was great too. I mean, the music is fantastic, and fortunately, well, let me get back to the story. They kind of disappeared, obviously, when punk rock happened. I think they got a little bit overshadowed by a different style of music. They were one of those bands that kind of got, bands like the glam bands, that were kind of leaning into punk rock a little bit, got sort of pushed out of the way a little bit by the punk rock bands. And Zolar X kind of went through a period of trying to reform, rebuild, but still basing themselves on the idea. They became a band called the Spacers for a bit, and then the Spies, which was another great band. You should look them up. But Zolar X, they even changed their names, which a lot of punk rock bands did later. You had Johnny Rotten, but in Zolar X, they were sort of these Jetson band space names in their Zolarian language. Igarist was the main guy, Stephen Delabosca. There was Zany Zatovian, Zori Zenith, Eon Flash, UFOian, UFAR, Rom Eclipse, etc. Their names were I think purposefully difficult to pronounce. I can't. I don't speak their language yet. I'm still a student, but they were so much fun. There was a record that they did called Timeless. I think is kind of a my friend Lisa Fancher turned me on to them, got me into this, got me a little gig working, doing some motion graphics, animation type stuff on a glam documentary for World of Wonder that she helped me get this gig doing some stuff. And so in my time working on this glam documentary, I discovered, I found things that I didn't know about. Like Joe Bryeth. I mean, look up Joe Bryeth. He was supposed to be the next David Bowie. And Zolar X, who I had never heard of. Suddenly there's like, wow, there's this cool space age band that was walking the streets of Hollywood in those days and playing in the clubs, playing in all the Whiskey A Go-Go's and whatnot. And just fascinating history in this town. Never ends. But they put out this record that became kind of a legend. It was their song. People had heard about it, and it was, nobody had really heard it, but people remembered the band, remembered seeing them. But I think it was 2004, Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys. Jello is also a huge music fan, historian, knows everything. Really liked Zolar X and re-released their album. I only have it on CD, so I'm going to start a new trend here on the podcast of not holding up LPs, but instead holding up tiny CDs, tiny little CDs. But maybe I can just do the thing where I hold it closer to the camera. That works. Yeah, there it is. And also I put my CDs in these little plastic things so that I don't have to fill up so much space. They're like these little plastic folders that hold the CD and the insert and the cover material, whatever else. Saves a lot of space in the podcast headquarters. But there's Zolar X. Check out those outfits. So cool. Look at the hairstyles. Look at these guys. So cool. And the album is super fun. You will like it. Get it. It's a bit of really incredibly cool Los Angeles history from that era. I think they were considered to be LA's glam band, and they had a punk rock edge to them. And I really like them. I like them a lot. And they're still doing stuff. They're still being creative. I mean, you can find them on the social medias and everywhere. You can still get in touch with, like say hi to them, and they're cool. They're still doing things, still being creative, still making records, still doing music, and still kind of working within these realms of their science fiction world that they created. I'm a big fan of Zolar X. Really love them. Bought the T-shirt. I recommend them. I think you should go check them out. Look for them. See if you can find some stuff on YouTube. I know there's a bit out there, but yeah, they're worth looking into. Fascinating band, and not just with the spectacle of the costuming and the glamness, but the music is actually really fun. On their album Timeless, I really love the song Jetstar 19. That one just rocks. All of them have great guitar playing. If you're a guitar player, the guitar tone, the riffs, the playing, the style, the just the things that he does on the guitar in the context of the song is very cool. Jetstar 19, great example of really cool guitar riffing. And the voice is very spacey, space age. He sounds like an alien. He sounds like someone from another planet. which really adds to the mystique of the band, the band. But anyway, Zolar X, check them out. You may only be able to find CDs, but they're worth your time. Thanks for listening. Take care. Talk to you again real soon.